Hello, you are watching MMA Crypt Fighting Talk. For today's show, we'll be going 2 rounds of action, featuring Gilbert Melendez, agrees terms with Bellator, and then we'll move on over to round 2, where we'll be discussing UFC planning to introduce fighter uniforms. Okay, let's find out who's joining me on today's show. We have Tommy Vars and Ray Thompson. Say hello to our listeners, guys.
Hey, what's up, guys? You can check me out on Twitter if you wish, at hired_merc.
Hi, this is Ray. Thanks for having me on the show. It's a pleasure to be on, and you can check me out on Twitter at MMA Mentor.
Okay, let's get started with round 1. And Gilbert Melendez agrees terms with Bellator. Apparently, at the moment, Gilbert Melendez was legally able to explore the free agent market and begin negotiating with mixed martial arts companies. He had his management team reach out to Bellator. In turn, Bellator sent an amazing offer, in Gilbert Melendez's words, and all looks to be agreed between Bellator and Gilbert Melendez. Apparently, the UFC have a right to match the offer by Bellator. We'll get into that in just a minute. But first off, Tommy, what do you make of Gilbert Melendez agreeing terms with Bellator?
It completely blew my mind. He's easily one of the best lightweights in the world. I think he should be champion because I thought he beat Ben Henderson. But I don't know, it just completely blew my mind. When I woke up and saw it, I was just like, no, there's no way he got cut from the UFC. And then he didn't get cut, he just apparently agreed with Bellator, and I was just like, that might be a bad career choice because of what we've seen with Eddie Alvarez. But I know, it's very shocking, to be honest with you.
He actually sent his management team to put the feelers out to Bellator. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Do you think that UFC will match the offer by Bellator, Tommy?
Well, apparently the pay is 200,000, and that's just a rumor. Just saw it on Twitter. I'm not sure if the UFC are gonna want to match that much money just for Gilbert Melendez.
Ray, what do you make of Gilbert Melendez agreeing terms with Bellator? It's pretty much out of the blue, but what do you make of it?
I think it certainly has come as a shock, like Tommy said. There's obviously there seems to be a bit more to the story though. I haven't looked into it properly, but I'm hearing that the management is the same management for GSP, and there's a bit of bad blood. I don't know if that's the case or not. But if that is the case, I think it's a shame that we're losing Melendez from the UFC because of actions from his management team rather than actions from Melendez. If he goes to Bellator, obviously he's going to do well in Bellator because of how good he is, and we'd all like to see Melendez versus Alvarez, Melendez versus Chandler. But personally, I'd much rather have seen it the other way, where Alvarez and Chandler join the ranks of the UFC. If you want to be considered one of the best in the world, you've got to fight the best, and if you want to fight the best, you've got to be in the UFC. So if Melendez does make this move, he's giving up any opportunity, any chance to become number 1 lightweight in the world, because he won't do that outside the UFC.
Do you think the UFC will match the offer by Bellator, Ray?
Not if it's that kind of money. I mean, we've seen Melendez have a couple of fights in the UFC, and obviously his fight with Diego Sanchez was absolutely crazy. It was absolutely fantastic. But at the same time, his fight before with Benson Henderson, it wasn't the most exciting of fights. So I don't think they'll be willing to go to 200,000 if that's what the figure is. That's a ridiculous figure for Melendez. But the other thing is, outside of the money, how much money do you make from sponsorship, and how many more people get to see you on the UFC than Bellator? So surely, if you want sponsorship, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this in the next topic as well, if you want sponsorship, you're going to make more money from being a UFC fighter because of all the benefits you get with that, especially being high profile like he is, rather than fighting in Bellator, I would have thought.
Well, that's what I mean. He's only had 2 fights in the UFC. What was it, a split decision loss in the title fight. In his second fight, he defeats Diego Sanchez in that fucking brutal war what they had back and forth, you know. It just doesn't make sense to me. I was saying to Tommy before, it's like, I thought it was a prank. If I didn't see the Twitter feed from Gilbert Melendez, I would have been like, whoa, this is a prank. But to tell you the truth, I actually love the news of Gilbert going to Bellator. I think Bellator need big names like this. They already have a good lightweight division if you look at the roster, but they more than likely only have about 2 or 3 top 10 fighters in Sarvanaski, Michael Chandler, and Eddie Alvarez. So if you look at it, Gilbert is just another fighter for the UFC. Well, another very good fighter. But to Bellator, he's going to be a star, and it shows by the fact that they are apparently offering more money, like Tommy said, than he was originally being paid in the UFC. So, and as far as the UFC matching the offer, I don't think the UFC will match the offer because there's planning to offer Gilbert Melendez a little bit less than what he was originally on. Obviously, Bellator willing to put their hand in the pocket. So, for me, he's Bellator bound, guys.
It's a good move for Gilbert Melendez for sure, but from like a fan's perspective, like myself, I really want to see him fight the best. So it's good for him, but bad for me. So, but I do understand why he's had to go out and do this because he has to make the most money for his family, etc., etc. So, I don't know.
Well, you mentioned that there, Tommy. Right? Bellator have already announced that they're going to do Michael Chandler versus Eddie Alvarez 3 for a pay-per-view. So that ties up the title. The only other person what's really worthy of fighting Gilbert Melendez is Sarvanaski. Below that, you probably got Terry Etim and whatnot, but he's in the Bellator tournament. So for me, really, after Sarvanaski, they've only got like the Bellator tournament winner. So
yeah, let's hope their tournament format actually works out this time.
Well, the news is going to be breaking thick and fast on this, guys. So all the media outlets should be itching for a UFC response. I'm not sure if Dana White is in Brazil for UFC Fight Night 36. Maybe we'll get a response from Dana on this in the post-fight press conference or the post-fight media scrum. But either way, I'm sure we're going to get a response from Dana White sometime in the next 72 hours. Tommy, do you think the response from Dana White when he speaks to the media, do you think it's going to be hush-hush as it's the contract talks, or do you think he's going to, rip Gilbert a new one?
Well, considering how Dana is, and it's nearly confirmed that he has signed with Bellator, I think he's going to rip Melendez a whole new one. I don't really see him talking highly at all about this, which is a shame. But I feel like he's just going to trash Gilbert Melendez.
Do you feel the same way though, Ray? Do you think he's going to trash Gilbert Melendez?
Yeah, Dana doesn't do hush-hush. We know that. It's F this and F that. So if he's not happy with it, then he'll make sure Melendez knows about it. And it'll probably be along the lines of we'll never see him in the UFC again, which we've had with a few guys. And, of course, Dana's one of these... Dana's very passionate, so he doesn't think before he talks. And, of course, when he's cooled down, things change. But, I mean, there's been lots of guys that were never going to be back in the UFC, and, of course, we've seen that happen. So hopefully we'll... If it does, I hope it doesn't happen. I like what Tommy said. I understand completely why Gilbert's doing it, but for me as a fan, I want Gilbert in the UFC because of how good he is, and I want to see him fight against the best, not against guys that are ranked around number 50, which is what he's going to get outside of those few opponents that you mentioned. But yeah, Dana won't hold back.
Well, apparently Dana White is pretty cool with Gilbert Melendez. It's Cesar Gracie he can't stand, and apparently Cesar Gracie's made a tweet but deleted it about an hour later. I'm just going to read that for you now, guys. Just let me get it up a second. So this was the tweet that Cesar Gracie made and later on deleted. He put, Gilbert Melendez won't be punked by Dana White. If not careful, our other guys will be leaving the UFC for Bellator. Why he retracted that, I don't know. Maybe someone like Jake Shields or something gave him a call and said, don't fuck up my UFC career too. But what do you make of the tweet from Cesar Gracie there, Tommy?
I don't really know. That's kind of like not something you should say. I mean, it's not your career. It's like you said, it's Jake Shields' career. It's the Diaz brothers' career. I mean, you're their manager. You get them these opportunities, but to say that they're gonna pack up their bags and leave the UFC, don't do that. You can't speak for someone when it comes to something like that. So.
Well, Jake Shields is on the cusp of a title shot, really. He's had some pretty impressive wins as of late. I think it's only Jake Shields' style what's really holding him back, Yeah,
he's in the John Fitch situation.
Yeah.
Where his style's holding him back as well. But if Shields wins his next fight, like you said, he could easily get a title shot. So, him to tweet that is just idiotic to me.
Ray, what do you make of the tweet from Caesar Gracie? Do you agree with Merck there that it's pretty idiotic?
Right, let's be honest. I mean, he's obviously trying to get the power in numbers here. Let's look at the people he's talking about. Jake Shields, you've just said you hit the nail on the head about his style. I mean, who really gets excited for a Jake Shields fight? I mean, his last fight against Damian Maia was horrible to watch. He's such a he's not charismatic as a person, and he's such a boring fighter to watch. So if Jake Shields wasn't in the UFC again, I don't think many people would be too heartbroken. Nick Diaz is probably more trouble than he's worth. He's in his out. No one really knows what Nick wants to do. I don't think Nick knows what he wants to do. The only one that's a real loss there that's coming to my head, and maybe there's some names I'm not thinking about, is Nate Diaz. I mean, Nate Diaz is fantastic, and I want to see as much as Nate Diaz as possible.
Sorry to cut you off there, Ray. Nate Diaz is under different management. He's under Mike Cogan.
Yeah, and he was under Caesar Gracie, wasn't he? And he moved, didn't he? If I remember rightly. So he obviously doesn't want to be. There's something wrong there where people do not want to be associated with that camp, it seems. But yeah, if what we're looking at is Jake Shields and Nick Diaz, there's not really much of a loss there because Nick Diaz is an inactive fighter anyway, and even when Jake Shields fights, you don't know if he's active or inactive because of how unexciting he is.
Okay, let's move on over to round 2, guys. For this round, we are going to be discussing fighter uniforms for UFC fighters. Apparently, the fighters will have to wear set clothing provided by the UFC for their fights. This includes walkout t-shirts and shorts. There's been rumours of having set colours for set weight classes, apparently too. Ray, what do you make of the fighters having set clothing provided by the UFC for the fights? Are you a fan of the idea?
When I just heard it as an idea, I wasn't, but now I've read into it. The main reason that I gather they're looking to do it is to do with sponsorship. A lot of the guys on the bottom, on the lower tier of the cards, are not getting the money that they should be getting for what they're doing. So therefore, if it's going to mean more cash for guys at the bottom end of the card, which helps them support their family, they can train full time, makes them better, then I'm all for it. I mean, we all love this sport. And we all want to see the sport go as far as it can go. So if this helps the sport grow and gives them, an income where they can do this full time, then I'm 100% behind it.
Yeah, apparently you mentioned the sponsorship thing. Dana White referenced to the Mac Danzig deal, where Mac Danzig came out, and took a stand against the sponsorships because they don't pay enough. Or some of them wasn't even paying the fighters. They was just offering like headgear and rash guards or clothing, for them to sell. So it was becoming a big problem for fighters, mainly the undercard guys, not the people like the Ronda Rouseys or the John Jones. But how do you think this will affect all the fighters, Ray? Like, speaking of the John Jones or the Ronda Rouseys, how do you think it will affect the upper tier fighters?
At the end of the day, the upper tier fighters are a lot of them that are up near the top. Most of them are probably already set for life anyway. I mean, I can't imagine that John Jones hasn't got enough money in the bank where if he never worked again, he's gonna struggle. So those guys are already set, and they should be. They've worked hard. They've got what they deserved. Whether it's going to bring their money down a little bit or not, I'm not sure. But at the same time, they're the kind of people that they've got so much access to so many different companies, etc., etc., etc. They're going to be getting money that's not even going to be declared publicly that we even know about. They're going to be doing adverts. They're going to like you have your Nike adverts, and in the UK you have all your famous footballers on there. There's going to be the same kind of thing where they have different sports people, and it used to be your golf, your rugby, your football, and all of a sudden you're going to be seeing your top MMA stars in those adverts as well. So I think the guys at the top will be okay. I think it's the guys at the bottom are the ones that need looking out for. And we talked there a little bit about sponsorship, and going a little bit off topic because this relates to Bellator rather than UFC. But I remember, I think within the last 12 months, where Rick Horn had to go out and publicly humiliate a sponsor because they refused to pay him after the fight. I mean, that's just disgusting. If you agree to sponsor money and the fighter does what they're asked to do, i.e., where's your logo, then you should fight. Those people should be paid. They're doing what you've asked them to do.
There is apparently going to be some blank spots, so you can put your own personal sponsors on there too. So still, the upper tier guys will be getting their big name sponsorship deals and be able to stick them on the shorts and the t-shirts and whatnot. So there'll be some spaces left for the upper tier guys. So for me, I think there's enough money to go around, and I think it benefits everyone. It's not going to affect the upper tier guys too much, but it's going to make a big positive impact on the lower tier fighters. So I really like this for the UFC. Who said that the UFC don't look out for the fighters, Ray?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in what the UFC does, and I'm a big fan of the UFC and Dana White. I mean, if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't even have a sport in my eyes. So yeah, as far as I'm concerned, they look after the fighters, and Dana White's gone and said publicly a few times about the amount of fighters that he's made millionaires. So yeah, they look after the fighters.
Well, Tommy, tell us, what do you make of the fighter uniforms for the UFC fighters?
Yeah, for sure. I like it a lot because, like Mac Danzig example, I mean, he went out with no sponsors at all because the money was bad, and there's always been this whole debate that lower tier fighters should be getting paid a lot more, and I feel like this actually solves that issue without directly the UFC giving them more money as such. I know Dana's always spoke about how if you want more money, you got to put yourself out there, be exciting, and make a name for yourself, and you'll get more money. But with this sponsorship deal, they will be able to do that even if they're not very good at marketing themselves. Because some guys just aren't very good at marketing themselves. It's just in their personality, they're just not that outgoing, I guess. Whereas guys like Conor McGregor, people talk about him having title shots, and he's had 2 fights. So, I mean, it's going to be great for the prelim fighters to get their name out. It's going to be great for their pay. They'll get to provide more money for their families. And, it's just a win-win situation for everyone, I believe. The UFC will end up in the good books because, well, it's a good thing.
Well, I mentioned the colour scheme thing just a minute ago. Obviously, I don't like the different colours for different weight classes. I'm not a big fan of that. But what I do like is a red corner and a blue corner. So the guy who's in the red corner wears red and the guy in the blue wears blue. Because at the minute, all they do is just use tape. And let's be honest, some of these new fighters what come into the UFC, some of the judges don't know who they are. So it'll be easier for the judges to score the fight on just the colour guys, instead of name. You know what I mean? It'd be like, oh, blue corner, it's pretty easy to see he's in the blue corner, so you can score the fight a lot easier for him. Because we've had some pretty horrendous judging recently. Do you think it will help with the judging if they sort of did a colour code thing too, Tommy?
Yeah, definitely. Mostly because I don't think the judges are that intelligent. So when it is just red corner, blue corner, and I don't even think they even look at the tape of the gloves, to be honest with you. I think sometimes when it's a close fight, they'll just go for someone who is either the champion or is just a bigger name or something like that. I don't feel like the judges are very good at all. So when they do have like red t-shirt, blue t-shirt, it'll help them significantly to know which fight is which. So then when the fight's happening, they'll be able to be like, oh, red guy's doing this, blue guy's doing this, blah, blah, blah. It'll help. Like mentally, it'll just help them.
Do you agree with that too, Ray? Do you think the red corner and the blue corner thing where they have, red colour shorts and blue colour shorts, do you think that'll help out?
Yeah, I do 100%. I think just because it's more visual, the straps on the gloves or whatever, it's not visual enough. Where if it is clear red, clear blue, it just makes it easier. And especially when if you've got like you say 2 newish guys and they sometimes can look a bit similar as well. Then yeah, definitely I think that's a good idea. I'm on board with that.
Okay, that is a wrap for today's show. Big thank you for joining me today, guys.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. I love these shows.
Okay, from MMA Crypt Fighting Talk, thank you for watching.